right? So child development 220, week 2, still talking about an intro into trauma and resilience, but also leading into self-care. And we'll even talk a little bit about theorists tonight and an overview of who we are and why we're here. Professor Johnson.
Great. Okay. So we started out with the assignment was to read the first 2 chapters of both books. They're very different. As you can see right off the top, I'm sure by the time you read both, if you had a chance to read both chapters, you went, wow, these are kind of the same in the beginning, because they both talk about the biology of stress and how the stress hormones affect the body, and how the cumulative effect of prolonged activation of stress hormones can cause some significant damage to our bodies, so much so that we can actually lose 20 years of our life, which is what the ACE study found out when they did that research. And that was based on the 10 screening questions that are in the front of Childhood Disrupted. If you chose to answer those questions, it's in the introduction. I signed chapter 1 and 2, and I'm notorious for not reading the introductions to books. And I completely forgot that the introduction had the screening questions, and so I was like, "Whoa, that's
so it's XXI." So in the introduction, right before part 1, it's the 2 pages right before part 1.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
right before chapter 1.
The very last 4.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we need to, I think, talk about the ACEs study, and we're going to get into that, and it's in the assignments for this week. The original ACE study document is there, and if you look at it and you see a bunch of charts and graphs, and you go, oh my, like, I never want to read this. This is all a bunch of gobbledygook that I don't understand. The important pieces to read are about previous research, which is the very beginning, where they talk about a literature review in a research article. This is how I read research. That's how I got through 2 grad programs. You read the introduction, find out what research has been done in the past, kind of a history of the problem. Maybe I'll read a little bit about the participants, like what kind of people were in this study. And for the ACEs study that Vitelli and Anda did in the beginning in I believe it was published in 88. It was almost 17,500 mostly college educated, predominantly white working professionals. So right there, my bells are going off, going, this is not what we know about equity now. Is that's not representative of the general population. It doesn't, so how do we say that, okay, just because you answered all these questions with this group of population, the people who took the study, we can't say that that's going to be the same if you go ask the people in Beverly Hills to take this study, if you go ask a group of people who are on Skid Row, the same study, ask them those questions. If you ask different cultural representations, you're not going to get the same data. And so what we always want to do in research is we want to make sure, as we're learning so much about in society right now, we want to have an equitable representation. And that was not really an equitable representation, but it did give it did plant the seeds that we need to do a lot more research on this, and we need to look at this from a lot of different populations and see how this works. And these 10 questions just kind of came up. I need to, in Canvas, I can't remember whether I put the interview with Vitelli in there. I don't think
You did.
I didn't make it available, did I?
No, it's in there. Let me double check. Hold on one
I
second.
don't think I made it available because I think I wanted to kind of do that tonight and talk about it kind of as a group. I just remembered that. I just want to see if I made it available. Pretty sure I left it closed.
Yes, I'm pulling it up. I had somebody laying on the floor behind my locked door trying to talk to me. It's like, no,
It's the doggy.
no. If she could, she would.
Yeah.
She's literally, well, that's why
Senior
he came.
Peyton.
She sits there. She's like, how come you're not letting me in? For several reasons.
Yeah, that would be
You want
Ike
that
too. He would be doing the same thing.
alphabetically or chronologically. Do you want those reasons? So I'm pulling up. I am pulling up the
I see it.
the module right now. Sorry, it's taking a minute. And
I just
yeah,
wanted to
so
see if it was in
there's
there.
a lot. So Jody, honestly, what a wealth of knowledge at her fingertips. We'll talk about something. She's like, yeah, I got that. Let's get that. Let's go that. Let's do that.
I know where
And
this
so,
is. I know where that is. You know,
yeah, right.
my brain is okay. So I did the Folletti short video. So
You want,
so
so
Vincent
you want,
Folletti is known as this. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to play this tonight at 7 minutes, and I wanted to talk about it because
Okay.
what he's going to talk about is original study, and then we'll keep carrying through with this conversation. But it kind of sums up the study that he did, and I thought it was a really good 7 minutes. So would you mind popping that through?
yes.
Let's
And
play
I'm putting
that.
it on, and I'm going to share computer sound. That's why I stopped the screen. So now I
thank
can
you.
actually do it. And I think it's pulling up here. Some to share are like less evident, like they're loading, and then the one but this is the right one. This is the YouTube.
I was hoping you could do this because
Yeah.
I didn't know if it had to be done outside.
Yeah. Hold on.
He's one of my heroes in life. Him and Dr. Bruce Perry. I'm in love. I'm in love with Dr. Bruce Perry. I have to admit it.
Next
I'm in love with his brain.
I'm not going to make the video much bigger than that, if that's okay with everybody, because every time I make it big, it just gets like
it's okay because it's really his voice, and you just hear it's just a zoom in on him and his voice. Okay. There's no charts or anything else like that. But it's really powerful. And unfortunately, get to
what we found in the ACE study involving 17,500 middle-class adults was that life experiences in childhood that are lost in time and then further protected by shame and by secrecy and by social taboos against inquiry into certain realms of human experience, that those life experiences play out powerfully and proportionately a half century later in terms of emotional state, in terms of biomedical disease, in terms of life expectancy. In 1985, I first became interested in developmental life experiences in early childhood, really by accident. In the major obesity program we were running, a young woman came into the program. She was 28 years old and weighed 408 pounds. Asked us if we could help her with her problem, and in 51 weeks took her from 408 to 132. And whoa, thought, well, my God, we've got this problem fixed. This is going to be a world famous department here. She maintained her weight at 132 for several weeks, and then in one 3-week period regained 37 pounds in 3 weeks, whoa, which I had not previously conceived as being physiologically possible. That was triggered by being sexually propositioned at work by a much older man, as she described him. And in short order, she was back over 400 pounds faster than she had lost the weight. I remember asking her why the extreme response, after initially claiming not to have any understanding of why the extreme response. Ultimately, she told me of a lengthy incest history with her grandfather from age 10 to age 21. Ultimately, it turned out that 55% of the people in our obesity program acknowledged a history of childhood sexual abuse. I mean, that obviously is not the only issue going on, but it was where we began. And as we went down that trail, then we discovered other forms of abuse, also growing up in massively dysfunctional households, etc. And the ACE study was really designed to see whether these things existed at all in a general population, and if so, how did they play out over time. We studied 10 categories of adverse life experience that were chosen because of their prevalence in the WAIT program: childhood sexual abuse, heavy-duty childhood physical abuse, I'm not talking spanking, major emotional abuse, recurrent humiliation, 2 categories of neglect, growing up in a home where one of the members of the household was chronically depressed, suicidal, mentally ill, or in the state hospital, growing up in a home without both biological parents, growing up in a home where one of the members of your household was alcoholic or a drug user, growing up in a home where mother was beaten, growing up in a home where one of the members of your household was imprisoned during your childhood or adolescence. Those were the 10 categories. In a middle-class population, 1 in 11 people has experienced 6 or more of those adverse life experiences in childhood. So this is very common, totally
1 in 11.
unrecognized. It was difficult for us to accept their commonness, but on the other hand, these are issues that most people never touch. And so who would know without routinely asking? But at a so-called ACE score 6, experiencing any 6 of the 10 categories that we studied, that person was 4,600% more likely to become an IV drug user than a person who had experienced none of those 10 categories. Okay? Now, you think,
Big
you read the
step.
newspaper, the latest cancer scare of the week, prostate cancer or breast cancer increases 30% and everyone goes nuts. I'm talking 4,600% increase. The same ACE score of 6 produces a likelihood of attempting suicide that is between 3,100 and 5,000% greater than the likelihood of suicide attempts in someone with none of those life experiences. So the power of this relationship is enormous.
Enormous.
So ultimately the question arises, how do life experiences in childhood end up with disease states a half century later? There are at least 2 big categories to account for that. One is through the use of various coping devices. One smokes to feel better, one overeats to feel better, one drinks to relax, etc. And those things carried out in heavy amounts have major destructive patterns, even though they may be immediately beneficial. The other broad category has to do with the effect of chronic major unrelieved stress on the workings of one's brain and central nervous system. In recent years, and this is relatively new, it's become clear that chronic major unrelieved stress can produce the release of pro-inflammatory chemicals in a person's body and also can suppress immune system function. Of the 10 categories that we studied, any 6 of them produces a shortening in life expectancy of almost 20 years. The magnitude of this problem is so huge, and the complexity of dealing with it after the fact is so huge, that realistically the only serious approach is going to have to involve primary prevention. No one knows how to do that but it's the right question to focus on.
Wow.
That's good. That's right.
Wow.
Okay. So take a minute to take a deep breath. Take a minute to just sit with that for a minute and just try to pick your jaw off the ground. And just the things that I've been telling you about how these stress hormones affect your life that happen during your childhood. When I say there's a profound and significant impact on your life, this is not an understatement. And this is exactly why I am incredibly passionate about this, not only from my own personal history of having 6 ACEs and having had over 17 orthopedic surgeries because of the cortisone wearing down my body and on my joints, on my body. But it's also because we are in a position as educators to make a difference and to break. We only see these children for 9 months or a year, but we have to, as educators, understand the magnitude of this problem and find ways to work with families in a multi-generational approach, because these children are experiencing it. The parents have probably experienced it and are passing it on to their children. And the parents, the grandparents probably experienced it or had something to do with it as well. This is all approaches right now that are taking place are pretty much going for a multi-generational approach. We have to heal the family. We can't just heal the child. One of the things that I was, one of the original things that got me started in this is I started, and I may have shared this, I started thinking, why is it that we are throwing millions and millions of dollars in these programs at schools, this reading program, that reading program, get these little math computers in the classroom for IL math or XL math, whatever it is, and yet we are not making a single inroad into the education of our children. Our children are still failing to meet benchmarks in 3rd grade that will predict whether they go on to graduate from high school. If you're not a fluent reader by 3rd grade, if you do not have the chances of you being really successful, and it sets you in a trajectory for the rest of your life. So as educators, we have a lot of important work to do. And if we're hurting ourselves and that hurt, a child comes into the classroom and triggers you to remember something from your past and relive that, you're experiencing that trauma over and over again. And then your cortisone is being activated as well. And so you're perpetuating that cycle as well, which is why we as educators have to deal with self-care. We have to take care of ourselves. We have to teach children how to be resilient and how to build, if not be resilient. We can't make them be resilient, but we can help them with coping strategies that are healthy and productive. And one of the things that Dr. Vitelli talked about was the social norms that, you know, in cultures that it's not macho to cry. It's not, men don't cry, men don't show their emotions, men don't, you know, women are just expected. That's part of the culture that women are subservient to, and their jobs is take care of you know, what goes on in the house and be there and have some certain role defined from one culture to another. It
Right.
varies. So yeah. So that wasn't the TED talk that pushed me over the edge. But when I saw this one, I was like, this is the ACEs study kind of in a nutshell, what he found. And from this, when he presented this to a council of medical doctors at a conference, they laughed him out of the room. They told him no one would believe him. He was nuts. Nobody would believe him. And then he met Dr. Anda, and they started doing research, and it led to more and more. And as we have seen it, there has just been an explosion of research on the effects of trauma, adverse childhood experience, and now the effects, and now into coping and resilience and self-care. And my feeling is that you can't go to a 1-hour workshop and learn self-care. We need a course on this. We need a course that not only talks about the ACEs studies and helps people understand that relationship of the child and the teacher and what you do and how it impacts the child. You might not even know what you're doing is triggering a child, because they may not, to them, when you were, and I'm just going to use an example, when you were 5-year-olds, if you were getting spanked every day, that was just normal to you. You didn't think to stop and question that there was anything different. Like that was just a normal day growing up. You didn't know any different at 5 years old, that was not something that happened to every child.
Mhm.
And a lot of times it isn't until you start going over to and having play dates where it's just you going over to your friend's house, and you start to see things a little different. Or maybe you see how parents act with children away from like a group of people. You go over to their house. Well, it's different when the parents are all together and the kids are all together and everybody's putting on this, oh, I'm a good parent show.
Oh, yeah.
But when you go to their house, it's a whole lot different. And you start to see things and hear things and go, huh, gosh, that mom hugs that child, and that mom doesn't say, well, why didn't you do this like your brother? Or why didn't you do this? And, and you start seeing things like that, and you think, well, that's not how I knew that person. I didn't know they were like that. So you start to question, and you just become more aware
Right.
of that. So I'm gonna
But
take a breath.
But and to piggyback on what Jody said, so Fleeting and Anda, they also, so they're considered contemporary theorists in child
Right.
in child welfare, but they're standing on the backs of giants too, because
Mhm.
in every class in every industry, you're going to learn about people, social scientists and researchers who are committed to this type of work. And again, this is just the most contemporary version of it, which is, I think it's perfect, because in
Right.
my opinion, it's that piece where nobody talks about mental health. But at the same
Right.
time, mental health is the foundation for everything. If you're mentally not okay, you're not going to be able to study, and you're not going to be able to sit in a chair, and you're not able to be able to share a toy with a friend or have empathy. I mean, like, mental health is, it can't be ignored. And I like how this is
Not at all.
that crossroads of that now. And again, weird silver lining to COVID, that we as a society are starting to look at just even being stir crazy or being away from people, or what are the healthy levels, and how does this healthy level affect our learning, our day-to-day processing, our relationships with people, how we drive, like every single thing. I remember that first, it was last year at this time. It's about a year ago when we had that
Yeah.
transition. And I tell you what, I didn't really tell this to a lot of people, but I was in such a weird panic. But it was like functioning, doing okay. And like, I felt like very gathery. I felt like a mother hen, and I was trying to gather all the chicks in. And I don't mean to say that in a pejorative, like in like a, I'm this way and the students are this way, but I felt like, oh my gosh, like I was trying to like protect students and smooth things over and all that. And all the while I had psychosomatically no sense of taste and no smell, knowing that that is a symptom for COVID. Didn't have COVID, but I was so wound up and so worried that my body was like, oh, you're that worried? Well, we're going to shut these two things off. Then you're going to be
Right.
panicking about this. And then you're going to have the kid at home and your husband's going to lose their job. Like, and then having other professors going, why are my students like not coming to class? And why did I have so many students failing? It was like, it is not connected. It is very much connected. And I love how we can now start this dialogue and more people are a little bit more receptive to it. Where this whole time I've been like, mental health, and you're like, no, we don't talk about those things. We don't talk about those things.
That's taboo. Mental
Yeah.
health is taboo.
Taboo,
You
but
know,
guess what?
and it's coming out of the closet, you know, in that sense that it's now becoming normalized. It's a normal part of our life. And when you think about the harmful effects of cortisol and adrenaline on the body and on the body systems, you know, in your kidney and your liver and these major parts of your internal organs are processing all these stress hormones, they're going to be affected. You can't take a gallon of gasoline and put it into a liver and think it's not going to be affected. It's going to be affected.
Right.
Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but somewhere down the line. And some things you can't turn back.
No.
So you can't turn back those things. So as getting back to what Marianne talked about with the theorists, the very early, the attachment people, the Harlow, Harry Harlow, I believe it is, Harry Harlow, John Bowlby, Mary Ainsworth. Those people were the people who talked about that attachment theory, that needing to have that secure attachment with the primary caregiver, and how that not having that, looking at the Russian orphanages, the children who were in the orphanages, and how those children came, how they developed, and how many problems those children had because of those earliest experiences in life without having a primary attachment figure and having a dependable person who that they can trust and know that they would be there. The behaviorists who said like Thorndike and Watson and Skinner, who were, you know, okay, and I should have put Pavlov in there as well, but
I can add that, absolutely.
Yeah. In terms of, do you reward before to incentivize, do you reward afterwards to get them repeat? These behaviorists had an influence in how we learn. We still do that in schools. We have gold stickers and gold stars for doing well on an assignment. And I personally am a firm believer in not doing that, but I understand for ABA it can be a very strong motivator for some children. And it all depends on how children work. And the idea is you start withdrawing those stickers and stretching them out very quickly for the typically developing children, such that, you know, because we want them to be intrinsically motivated. We look at Piaget and how did he feel like children were in charge of their learning? What was the role of the teacher? How did this whole idea of children having a sense of agency, having some control over their learning and their life, and feeling a sense of value? Maria Montessori, her work in Italy was not just about creating play materials for children. It was about taking the street children and the children with Down syndrome or learning disabilities or even physical deformities, and showing that they could become worthwhile contributing members of society when the environment is structured such that they are able to be successful. And so her sense of the child having, her feelings of the child having a sense of agency were very important. When we have a sense of agency and feel like there's somebody who cares about us and will listen to us, that is an antidote in a way for trauma, because we can rise above that. That's something that helps us. Maslow, look at what did Maslow say was the very bottom of that level that we need. What was the first thing we needed in order to go up that pyramid to self-actualization? Which, does anybody ever get there? What did we need at that very first level?
Does anybody remember?
Anybody remember? 107. The basic needs, our various basic needs, that sense of security, that the trust. Marianne, you want to jump in there?
Well, it's physiological. So just
right. Yes, it is physiological.
yeah. So air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, and
Right.
yeah, right. So just your physical needs, and that's why we're starting this whole course off. We're talking about our physiology, our body, our biology, because that's
Right.
the basis for everything. And then it moves up to safety, so personal security,
Safety.
resources, health, right?
And so
then
we see, yeah,
love and belonging. So like friendship, intimacy, family, some sort of connection. That's where a lot of us are really struggling right now, because maybe we're in the same bubble, or we're missing people or whatnot. And again, COVID has made us rethink these sorts of things. Then it goes into esteem, like respect, self-esteem, recognition, or acclimate, just being able to have some effect in the world and getting some acknowledgement for it. And then the top is self-actualization. I haven't met anybody who's self-actualized.
yeah. That's the thing about his theory. What's a big critic? And then look at Erickson and that duality that you've got going between the positive, the world is safe, and the world is not a safe place. I feel secure, I feel insecure, I feel competent, I don't feel I'm competent. And how we, so, and then the other one is Vygotsky, who said that his whole idea was children learn, one of his major idea was children learn by those who are more competent than them, with that, and in that zone of proximal development. So that's the part of it. But the part that people don't talk about with Vygotsky was that model and that sense of using tools, one of them being language and artifacts from our culture as teaching, to teach us that sense of belonging and connectedness that we have within our community, whether that's our family or the larger community. So we have these theorists, and I picked these, and so instead of just doing a group project on this theorist, I don't want to know when they were born. I don't want to know what they did. I don't want to know what they write. We're going to look at these theorists from a kind of like a trauma-informed lens, I want to call it. It's how did they see children in the sense of their ability to affect their world and how the world affected them. It's this bidirectional. We could put Bronfenbrenner in there too, for that matter.
I'm adding it.
Yeah. So one of the articles that's up there is called Reflecting. It's in this week, is Reflecting on Childhood and Child Agency in History. And this is an article that will help you a little bit with this. It talks about child abuse, talks about children were considered property. Children at one time you had a lot of children because the infant mortality rate was so high, you didn't know which one was going to live through the winter. So you had children. Girls were married as soon as they had their period. They married those girls off. And this was in the covered wagon days, which was not even 200 years ago. And they were married off, and they had children very young, and they had a farm grade. At that time, the average lifespan was also about 35 years. So there was a whole different thing. Now we have women having babies in their 50s, and we don't, I mean, I still find that a little crazy, but
Energy for that.
but we know that we live longer right now, and so So this article is going to help you with this, but the idea is, as a group, it's more of a thinking, digesting, talking, teasing these ideas apart, and just coming up with some kind of way that these theorists, you're not just going to, I don't want to hear about the zone of proximal development. I don't want to hear about scaffolding. I want to hear about this, and I'll help you with some tools on this. But thinking about what was normal for that time. You know, one time it was completely normal to spank children. I grew up, that was normal to get a spanking if we did something wrong. It just happened. To this day, I can't look at those ping pong ball paddles because that's what was used on me when I was a child. I hate those things, you know, and, but that was, you know, I didn't realize until really like in the last 2 or 3 years, how abusive a household we actually lived in, talking to my siblings and thinking about all of a sudden, like this light went on and I was like, oh my gosh. And then I went, but that was normal at that time. But does that make it right? I don't know.
It may have been more culturally accepted practices, but doesn't mean that it felt right. Doesn't mean that it didn't hurt.
Yeah.
It didn't scar.
Yeah. It didn't, yeah, it did. But at that time, that, you know, spare the rod, spoil the child was a philosophy that was very prevalent throughout history of raising children. And I'm sure you could go back into biblical times and find that all that, you could go back to even Socrates and Socrates and what was the other guy? Like I'm having a brain fart. The ancient Greeks and Romans had very different views about children. One was that they should be treasured, you know, we just want to give them the experiences and let them unfold, somewhat like Rousseau and the blank slate. And the other ones were, no, children should be disciplined to become Roman soldiers because we need to develop them to be fighters. And so we have these views of children that have evolved over time. And where are we now? Where are we now? What are children now in our society? How do we look at children now? Are children powerful? Maybe it depends on your culture, your ethnic culture as well. I had a friend who worked in a Korean school, a Korean preschool. One of the grandmothers came and hand-fed her grandson every day because in that traditional Korean home, children do not feed themselves until they are 3 years old. Is it? Yeah.
Yeah, all the way through 3, yeah.
Yeah, all the way through their 30 year of life. They don't feed themselves. And she fed him by hand, the rice in the mouth. Now, what does that kind of tell you about, you know, how that culture views children's sense of agency? And how does that then fit in with what we do in preschool now? You're 2.5, you take your plate to the you know, and put it in the bucket. My granddaughter, when she was 6 months old, it was, okay, go put your bubba in the sink. And I'd carry her over and she'd drop her bottle in the sink. My grandson is 2.5. Okay, go take care of your cup. He walks over, drops his cup in the sink. He has chores. We tell him you have chores. He puts the blinds up. That's his chore. He has to sit there, pull the strings on the blinds and put the blinds up. But you know what? His sense of agency is probably more powerful than me saying, oh, don't do that. You might break it.
Right.
Don't do that. Yeah. No. Right. Yeah, we did have to have a blind guy come out because when he was younger, he did overdo one of them. But you know what? That happens. But if we don't ever teach children how to do it and in a way that doesn't destroy them in the process, we want them. What do we want them to do? We're a society that brings our kids up and we kick them out and like go out and be good citizens. You know, motherhood's a crappy job, I used to say. Our job is to raise them so that we can kick them out. or so that they can survive on their own. So, somewhere around, the early 20s, somewhere between, 16 for some kids and 30 for, or wherever for others, now with COVID and job losses, 40, 50,
There's
they're back on the couch.
yeah, a
But
lot of multi-generational families now more than ever.
yeah,
And that's,
yeah,
pragmatic in a lot of ways, and a lot of cultures like support
absolutely.
that.
Yeah,
But this is, I'm glad that we were talking
yeah,
about it now, because it is an assignment coming in the future, but
it's coming.
we're here to plant the seed of like, so if you
That's what
guys
we want
are,
to talk
yeah,
about.
so we'll talk more about that. And I added a couple of, pieces in there, but
Right.
we wanted to leave you with almost a parting gift, if we could talk about Berkeley.
Berkeley, yes.
Yay.
Okay, so I came to this through my many emails. UC Berkeley has a wonderful center. It's called the Greater Good Science Center. And every month they put out a calendar of be kind to yourself and others. And if you click on these links, it'll take you to something that you can do every day. It could be a webinar, it could be a suggestion, it could be, but it's self-care. It's something that like turn on some music for a mood boost. And I don't know if I clicked on the 3rd and turned on the music, what I get, but it comes out every month. But also, if you get into Greater Good Berkeley, you'll spend days in there.
It's great.
It just they have actually free classes called The Science of Happiness, free, that you can take. The Science of Gratitude. You can take these, they're totally free. And they're just classes. The Science of Contentment. It's just an amazing mental health boost,
So
to go
I
in there.
downloaded the calendar and integrated into my calendar. So every morning,
Yeah. Oh, I
at the-
didn't even think about it.
yeah, you can integrate it into your calendar. And I
Wow.
have an Android phone, so I'm sure it works with iCal as well. But yeah, so it says March 30th, turn on some music for a mood boost. I don't know about you guys, but one of my guilty pleasures, especially if I'm really tense, and maybe the house is empty, I will do YouTube karaoke on the computer. So yes, this is my work. I eat sometimes right here. I do yoga down there, and yes, now this is my DJ, my karaoke. I say some people run for catharsis to get things off their chest. I carry it. And
Yeah.
we all know the power of music, and so
Right.
these prompts are just, we all know this, but sometimes I'm like, you know what, you're right. I haven't listened to my favorite song in a while, or I haven't, when's the last time I put on that, or Spotify or whatever you have, like something to get you going, or just try something new. Right? Because sometimes in Spotify it'll say, it'll give you suggestions or something like that. I'm like, something new. And then I started going off on this tangent of like French women, like hip hop and stuff. It was like, oh, that's cool. So, sometimes just taking a minute, and these prompts just kind of just help a little bit, little things.
And
Like,
there's one for every month in the calendar. If you just sign up to get their emails, of course, they'll always say, click, they're going to ask for a donation, because it is a nonprofit, and just click it off. It asks if but I have a lot of resources. I'm going to be sharing them. When we get into one, we'll be, we have some really great things planned for you coming up for resilience, and I don't want to just wait till the end and self-care. So we're going to sprinkle some of those in between all of these. So this is kind of like a gift for this week. And
how about even on Mondays?
explore.
On Monday it says Stand Up for Women on International Women's Day. What? I know it's Women's History Month. So again, we have no other reason than just to be the better version of ourselves. I mean, self-care is sustainability. And if we're not taking care of us, whose job is it? Why is it
Look at Tuesday the 2nd.
Being hard on yourself?
I think I need to put that on my marker on my mirror for a couple of days.
grace. We need to all extend ourselves some grace.
Right.
And again, we do see a lot of this in our work, that we will get wounded healers sometimes. And again, and that's neither here nor there, but we can't walk into an industry or a career that puts a lot of other people first without putting ourselves even in the top 10 or the top. Come on. Right. So we have got to think about it this. Think of your most burnout teacher you ever had. If that person had a self-care practice, how would it have changed your educational experience in that class?
Self-compassion is critical, and it's self-compassion. Researcher by the name of Kristen Neff has just done tons of work on self-compassion, and I really like a lot of the stuff that she's done. Before, she wasn't marketing, she was just getting started, and now they're doing some stuff, but we're they want you to come to this training or that training, but there's a lot of free stuff out there. It's just, but I love the work she's doing on self-compassion. It's great, and she actually has, I believe, a podcast now that those are free.
So,
Yeah.
so check in. How are you guys doing? We're gonna look at next week's stuff that's already in the module, but how are you guys feeling? Anything you want to process from tonight? Anything new? Any questions? Anything that came up for you? And you don't have to share.
I had a question with the mandated reporter training, because I was putting in my calendar. So it said the first 3 weeks of class, but then it said the due date was not this Sunday, but the next Sunday.
April 4th. Yeah.
Okay.
I moved
So it's
it
April
out.
4th. Got it. Thank you.
I moved it out, and
okay, so it's not the 14th. It's not the 14th, right? Okay, because I was doing my calendar too, and I noticed it was the 14th. I'm like, I think that's next week, and I was kind of just like, okay.
Yeah, I just like, there's no way you're going to get it done.
Yeah.
And
we first thought, 2 weeks, and then it was like, no.
Yeah.
So thank you for moving that. Yeah.
And we were going to do it too, just so you know, we're going to do it too.
Yeah, I started kind of from scratch because it's been a while.
So we have to hold each other accountable to that. Okay, it's 8:30. We try 8:32. We try to get you out of here, but we kind of blew that this time.
How are you guys with the 90-minute class? Is that too long? Not long enough? How's it going? Like, just check in on that.
I think it's good.
Because we tend to do this 90-minute. We settle in at around 90 minutes. And so we can be kind to each other and say, if that works for you guys, then we don't have to say like, oh, we had a goal of 8:15 and we blew it. If it's natural, organic ending time and it works for you guys, then please let us know. If you have to leave, then go.
Feel free to leave.
Yeah.
What I wanted you to, one of the things I wanted to come away from tonight, realizing that this is a big deal. This ACEs stuff is big.
Yeah.
When you heard those numbers about the increases to suicide, to the negative and very destructive behaviors, this is huge. This is huge. And COVID that was before COVID that those numbers were there. I can't even imagine what they are when you factored in COVID. And if we don't take care of ourselves and each other, that is the key. Each other. We just have to. Yeah, because we are caring for these little people who really, really need us, especially the ones who are coming from, maybe not great circumstances. And so many people who go into the caring profession go into it because they themselves were hurt as children. They experienced adversity or they hurt, and something hurt them, and they said, I will never let this happen to another child. and I'm going to do this. I'm going to go in this to make that difference. You have that power. You can be it just takes one person. Just takes one person to make a difference in someone's life. And you just never know when that'll be. So I want you to understand, when Marianne and I say we're here for you, we are here for you, because it is not just from our histories as caring people, but because you're going to go out and you're going to make a difference in somebody else's life.
Think of the ripples in the pond
Yeah.
that are happening here, right? So you connect with a student, maybe that's students, feeling terrible about themselves, and they were going to go have negative coping skills or some things like that, or you connect with a student in a way that their home life doesn't connect, right? And they carry this glimmer of hope, even after like one conversation, they carry this glimmer of hope with them through these adversities. And then that person becomes what? Another parent, or maybe even a doctor or whoever, right? And these ripples of change are happening even starting now. And so we talk about constantly how we're blessed to be in this position, because I wish I had the leadership in my life who was a little bit more mindful, and maybe more honest, and maybe more considerate and all that business. We're hoping that this next generation of educators, so I don't just say teachers, because being an educator is a lifestyle. It is a culture. It is not a job. It's not even a career. It is a lifestyle. We all had good teachers and bad teachers. This next generation of teachers are going to be need a whole different set of qualities, a whole different sensitive lens, like Jody said. And we're just so thrilled that you guys are in the class now at this cusp of this next wave of really, again, that honesty between education and mental health. Those things are not separate. They are together, and they've always been. But now you guys are like the first foot soldiers out there, the first agents of change, the first catalysts that really get it. And there are some trauma-informed educators out there, but we're trying to make it like waves of educators coming out. And you guys are like the first ones. So again, I'm grateful for being here. I'm grateful to know that you guys are excited about this, or even curious about it. You don't have to be like nutty excited like we're excited, but even mildly curious about this shows that you are forward thinking, and you want to make tomorrow a better version of what's happening today or what happened in the past. Very, very, very grateful to be here. So thank you all.
Thank you.
And Professor Johnson, honestly, thank you. Honestly, your guidance and your wisdom. I wish I had you in my life a long time ago, but but here we are now. So yeah, really, really, really blessed to be here. It's like a gem in the middle of a hurricane. It's so weird. It's like finding this massive diamond in the middle of a tornado. It's just wild to me.
Yeah,
it's a funky balance. So how are you guys doing? Check in before we let you go.
Good.
How about I challenge you guys to do a reaction. You don't have to say anything, but just do, if you have the option of a reaction at the bottom. You can do like thumbs up, you can do you can do whatever. You can do claps, whatever is most matching what you guys are at right now.
Moving forward.
Yay, I see heart.
Yeah.
Yay, claps. Oh yeah, awesome. Sometimes we don't need it. We don't need the words. That's why emojis were invented. We're kind of backsliding into hieroglyphics again, but I'm not opposed to that.
Have a really good week, rest of your week, and a good weekend. And we'll be working on next week's stuff. We are going to be getting into some of the child abuse and getting into the chapters where, like I said, feel free to read ahead, but some of these chapters really have a kind of like a overarching case study of a student. So we're gonna get into those and Born to Love. We might hop around a little bit as the chapters fit with the different.
And after tonight, Jenna, thank you for the reminder of the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm gonna find the graphic and post that So everybody has
Oh,
that.
yeah,
And
great.
I will find the Maslow one and post that one as well.
right.
I think that's great to have.
Yeah. Okay.
Great.
Good night, everybody.
All right. Take care.
Night.
Let us know if you need anything.
Yep.
I had a
Sorry?
question about the
Oh,
mandated
sure.
reporter. I
Yeah.
did mine for my job that I just started,
Yeah,
and I finished it on the 24th, and I uploaded like the
Awesome.
certificate.
Perfect.
I was wondering what webinars you wanted.
We'll
you-
work on those. I just need to put a list together. They won't be due by they might be due by the 14th, but it's not going to be, you'll just have to do, what did we
We're-
say? They have to do
We're
7 hours.
developing that. We're trying to pick the best ones. And
Okay.
at the same
Right.
time, we're not gonna put a huge urgent due date on it. We'll give you some time, appropriate amount of time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
more important that you get the mandated reporter part done earlier, because that's the part that we're in, is talking about this section of the class is about the trauma and abuse and all that. And it covers a significant amount of the student learning objectives for this course. So it's like, woohoo! We'll
Yeah,
have that
right,
knocked
right.
out.
And so, yeah, we
in
just
a
want
lot of
everybody
the
to have,
course.
we want everybody to have the shared language on that. So we don't
Right,
have to
as
like
we move forward.
reiterate it. But
Yeah.
those offset documentaries or videos or whatnot, that's just to equitize it a little bit, but at the same time, the focus is on the shared language, and so our training is all kind of in a similar spot.
We're all in the same spot.
Okay.
All right. Have a
Good,
great
good question.
weekend.
All right.
Oh,
I have
yeah.
a
If you
question.
can log off at any time.
Yeah, and Carla, you jumping in?
Yeah, sorry. I have a question as well. I didn't finish some of the assignments from last week. Is there any way of still turning them in?
Get those in. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Get those in. We haven't graded everything, so you're fine.
Yeah. I
Okay.
started grading some. The thing is, just don't let the discussion boards dangle more than, if I would say pick something, get your discussion boards done first thing, then work on the assignments.
Right. Like, so for this
Okay.
week, don't let the discussion boards go past the week. If you're trying to catch
Right.
it last week and then you let these two go by, then you just kind of like shot yourself in the foot a little bit. So
Right.
yeah, at least get your first post in, because it's Wednesday night and usually the first post is due around now. Maybe right now,
Yeah.
after you leave this class, get your first post in for chapter 2 and chapter 5 discussion board, then go back to last week's stuff. And so you're kind of moving it at the same time.
That's in 112 is 2 and 5.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think we just have one. For
Just
this
one.
class.
Yeah, just one in this class.
This
Sorry.
will only have one a week, but
Yeah.
the other class has 2 chapters this week.
Wow.
So, all right.
Okay. Yeah, I finished
All right.
this week, so I just needed to do last
You
week.
got it.
So I just
You got it.
Okay.
Yay!
Yeah, you got it, Carla. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay,
There you
thank
go.
you.
Yeah,
Sure.
good questions. All right, you guys, I'm gonna let you guys go.
Yeah.
And then we do a wrap up.
Okay,
So
just,
take
I'm
care.
sorry.
Bye,
Thank
Allie.
you.
Bye.
Bye, Jenna.
Another
Bye,
question?
Jocelyn.
Yeah, when will